Welcome to Western Wisconsin Journal. I'm Meg Heaton, and for almost 30 years, I was a reporter with the Hudson Star Observer. These days, I'm working with the River Channel to present people and topics of interest in the Hudson community. And as we are all well aware, COVID-19 has presented us with some very unique issues and opportunities to talk about things that are affecting our daily lives and personally and professionally. My guest today is Selena Freimark. She is with the UW Extension Office in St. Croix County. She is a health and well-being educator, and she's with us to discuss resources and support that's available to residents and the community as we try to navigate these particularly unique times in our new reality, which includes a lot more social isolation than a lot of us are used to. So welcome, Selena.
Thank you, Meg, for having me.
Could you maybe just start out explaining what your job is and a little bit about Extension for people who have heard of Extension but don't necessarily know what you guys do?
Sure. At the University of Wisconsin-Madison Division of Extension, we teach, learn, lead, and serve, and connect people with the University of Wisconsin and engage with them in transforming lives and community. And so Extension is uniquely positioned with offices in almost every county and also tribal nations across the state of Wisconsin. And local extension educators, what we do is embody the Wisconsin idea by bringing the resources and expertise of the university to local communities. And in St. Croix County, our office is located in Baldwin.
Okay. So what is your role as the health and well-being educator?
Sure. So I am, as you said, I'm a health and well-being educator, and my role is to help bring those health and well-being resources from the university to the community. And many of the topics I'm focused on right now have to do with substance use and health equity, but also this mental wellness. And as we've seen in what's happening now with COVID, it's really amplified people's need for better resources and to have more resources. And extension educators, we live and we play in the communities that we serve, and we're seen as trustworthy resources to partners to address individual and community issues, including social isolation and loneliness. So that's kind of what I do, is help bring those resources to the community focused on health and well-being. But Extension has a number of programs, including 4-H, which I'm sure a lot of your viewers have heard of. Positive youth development, agriculture, horticulture, nutrition education, community development, and of course, health and well-being, which is my role.
The very nature of the issue of social isolation means people are isolated from it. How do you get your services out to people?
Well, we do a lot of partnering with the community. So communities have a lot of resources available to support individuals experiencing social isolation and loneliness, ranging from emergency support such as distress helplines to programs and initiatives offered through groups like the Aging and Disability Resource Center. So what we do is help disseminate those resources and work with our partners to see if there's other things that are needed, and also make sure they're aware of the things that we can offer. You know, our role through Extension is to help people, residents, community leaders, and partner organizations alike about what is available and how to connect with those resources. Local and statewide resources for this particular projects were compiled to help our educators and local partners in meeting the diverse needs in our communities to help mitigate the long-term and physical mental effects of COVID-19.
So specifically, how are you partnering with organizations like in the Hudson area?
Well, I'm a part of the Hudson COVID Community Response Team. I believe that's the right order. They're a mental health committee. So what we do is we meet weekly and kind of discuss what are some of the needs. So that was a way for me to be able to put this resource out, is for that particular group. I also am a part of the Healthier Together Coalition, which is a coalition that is in St. Croix County and Pierce County. And so we have a lot of things that we're doing to help meet the needs of health in the communities as well.
When you talk about social isolation, I'm assuming there are groups that are at a higher risk than others.
Absolutely. So older adults are at a greater risk for social isolation and loneliness because they are more likely to live alone, have experienced loss with maybe family and friends,
Mhm.
have chronic illnesses and other limitations such as hearing loss. So the concerns about COVID-19 remains and is particularly salient for these high-risk subgroups such as older adults. And they will need continued support as this crisis kind of ebbs and flows until there's a vaccine or reliable treatment that's available.
And for people who are caregivers, or the conduit for this high risk group, what kind of services or resources can you present them with?
Absolutely. So our guide contains a number of resources in the community, including emergency support. So maybe there's the Institute of Aging Friendship Line, that number that's available, and of course 211, which is a huge resource in our community to help individuals. We also put in there the St. Croix County Health Access and Intake Line, and different organizations around the county, such as the ADRC of St. Croix County, is listed in this resource guide as well. And they have a variety of programs to help caregivers and older adults.
Okay. So you mentioned the guide. Can you expound on that a little bit and who that's available to?
Mm-hmm. The guide is available to anybody, any resident, any partner, anybody in the community who would like to access it. It's available on our website, which I can give you later. As partners, if things change, we update this on a regular basis. So it's available to anybody in the community that might need this to help with the social isolation and loneliness that is impacting the physical and mental health. So again, it lists lots of different options. It lists resources available directly from Extension, and also just different socialization programs, senior centers, companionship programs, if they're available, family caregiver lines. We have lists of memory cafes that are available in the county, and including different ideas and resources on healthy eating, on food safety, and food resources too.
Okay. And in addition to older citizens or those in my age group, are there other high risk groups or other groups that you're specifically seeing needs in during this?
Sure. Well, when we talk about social isolation and loneliness, what we're seeing is we're really biologically designed to connect to others. So there's a little bit of a distinction between social isolation and loneliness. So social isolation means lack of social contacts. So that could happen for any really group out there. And also loneliness. So loneliness is really the feeling of being alone. And that's different for different people. So someone could be in a group of people and still have that feeling of loneliness. So it's really interesting because a third of adults age 45 and older report feeling lonely. And actually a quarter of adults age 65 and over are considered socially isolated. So it is impacting high risk groups in a big way, but it reaches across as a lifespan.
And you mentioned, I think, people dealing with particular medical or addiction or mental health issues. What about in those situations? What services do we have?
So 211 is a great resource for those who are feeling a high level of crisis with mental health or needing kind of some of those resources like housing resources or food resources. So that's available for high risk groups. And just being able to reach out to somebody and when you're feeling that way is really important. And the folks over at 211 are a great resource, even if you're not even sure what you need. So maybe you're feeling strongly that you're feeling isolated or you're feeling lonely, but you're not really sure where to go to. It's great to look over our resource guide, but if you're not really sure and you're kind of stuck with even what you might need, that's a great resource to have too.
Okay. And then can you speak a little bit to what we can do for each other? How can we help each other out through this period?
Absolutely. So when you're talking about social isolation and loneliness, there are some risk factors and also protective factors. So when we talk about risk factors for this, we're talking about people, if they have functional limitations, that impacts it. Physical limitations, of course, would impact this directly in addition to COVID. Living alone is a big risk factor. Loss, life transitions, whatever it makes it harder to engage is a risk factor for feeling isolated and feeling lonely. So when our community can come together and provide resources for people, it really helps strengthen that connection so that a person feels like no matter what, there's somebody I can go to connect with. And also protective factors come into play. So engaging in activities like volunteering, that can form a really strong sense of connection with others. Being involved in things like faith communities or social groups that are available, having family engagement, and again, community engagement is a big thing. So some people who don't maybe have as strong family connections as maybe they used to, being able to reach out or have those community connections are really, really important.
Are there, have you noticed one of the things that we hear about from time to time is the increased risk of death by suicide or suicide attempts or suicide ideation, or the impact that this has on families who are isolated and maybe leading to an increase of domestic violence or issues like that, or and those specifically with children who are not used to being by themselves, are used to seeing their friends, and they're not seeing that anymore. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about those groups?
Absolutely. So the sense of social isolation and loneliness really isn't a new thing, but what COVID-19 has done is really amplified issues that were existing or putting people in situations where they're more at risk for feeling this way. So when you kind of look at how this affects our mental health, it really impacts it quite a bit, because over the short term, we typically can adjust to situations where we might feel lonely or we might feel isolated. Maybe some of our social contacts that we had pass away or move away. So for a short time, we typically can adjust. But as time goes on, isolation and loneliness really impact our well-being, both physically and mentally. So, when you're feeling that toxic stress, when you're feeling really stressed, that those stress chemicals course through our body and of course make it really difficult for us to be well. So during the pandemic, isolation and loneliness are likely to increase because of the result of social and physical distancing. So those are risk factors that are increased simply because we have to be limited in the contact that we've had. So it's, or adapt, and maybe we're not used to adapting the way, and not everybody has the tools or the resources to adapt like other people can. Some people are able to have internet connection, let's say, to be able to have Zooms like we're having now to connect with their family or their friends, when other people might not have that kind of resource. And of course, with schools, some individuals don't have the food resources that they relied on the schools to have. So again, 211 is going to be a really good resource to have, to be able to, if you're feeling that way, or if you're lacking the resources or at risk for domestic violence, there are resources for everybody available that you can be immediately connected to.
You've mentioned 211 a couple of times. Could you just elaborate a little bit more on what that is in case somebody's not familiar with it?
Sure. The United Way has a program called 211. United Way is a part of a lot of the organizations and the coalitions that we're involved in. And just have to dial 211, and now it's local. So we have local operators who can pick up the phone. Their office, I believe, here in Hudson, where I'm at right now, and can connect with a variety of resources. And also it's really nice to have that live person on the other end of the phone, and they're not sure where to get the resource, they'll find it for you. So it's a really good, valuable resource to have that the United Way is offering. You can also go and to their website as well.
One of the things that a lot of people are facing, and not a group necessarily that is used to giving a lot of thought to what they're doing, but they're putting parents in the situation of being at-home educators or deciding whether they're going to send their kids to school or keep them home. Do you have any resources or any advice there?
We do have a resource that's available on our website as well that helps you to make the decision a little easier. Maybe that's not the right, maybe easier is not the right word, but to be able to put the decision of whether or not to see someone and how it works with just our ever-changing status with COVID-19. So we have a resource available that contains links, but also a worksheet that you can fill out to help you make the determination of, is seeing somebody or seeing a group of people going to be considered higher risk or lower risk, and how do you feel about that? So it helps you kind of navigate making the decision of when we're in a situation like we're in with COVID that is prolonged and changes a lot, and we're not exactly sure when it's going to end. So we also have that resource available for people.
And that's on your website, or is that part of the resource guide? Or
that's a separate document available on our, it'll be available on our website.
Okay. And what is that website?
It is stcroix.extension.wisc.edu.
Okay.
But if you Google,
we'll post that. We'll post that with the interview. Before I let you go, obviously this is a unique situation for everyone, but what's your takeaway from all of this in terms of your professional experience having gone through this? What is it that you really want people to understand about what you do and what Extension does?
Oh, that's a really good question, Meg. Thank you. So I've been in this role for about 1.5 years. And when I started, one of the biggest things, biggest tasks I had was just to go talk to community stakeholders, talk to leaders of organizations, people who are doing the work, and have a conversation about what are some of the things that you're concerned about for our community. And substance abuse disorder, substance use disorder, and mental health concerns really rose to the top of that list. And also this topic of social isolation, which really piqued my interest because I knew of it, but it was kind of this kind of nebulous idea of, how do we feel isolated in a community where we have 24/7 connections just about on our phones and things like that. So when COVID hit, it was really fascinating to see how much this thing called social isolation was amplified. And people really started feeling it. But there are people who've been feeling this way for a very long time. So as an educator, it's really great to be able to have resources from the University of Wisconsin-Madison to be able to give out to the community. For instance, in the fall, I will be leading a program called Taking Care of You, which helps teach stress reduction skills and self-care techniques for people. And it's going to be all online. So that's a nice resource. It's free, which is another great thing about Extension is that the resources are available for everybody. No matter what language you speak, how much, again, our resources are free. It's just a great way to be able to get the education out to people who need them.
What struck you the most about going through this from your own point of view of being socially isolated?
That's a really good question, too. It was very interesting as I became more self-aware of how I was dealing with the situation. I am an introvert by nature. I am mostly a homebody. So it was interesting to observe people that in my life, like my husband or my siblings, that were having a harder time because they're more social and like to be in contact with people. What I find interesting is people are different with what they need is in terms of social isolation and loneliness. Again, as we kind of mentioned before, somebody feeling lonely in a crowded room is a possibility. What do people need based on what their desires are? So one solution is not going to fit all in this pandemic when it comes to feeling isolated and feeling lonely. And the importance of really reaching out to people and being vulnerable enough to say, hey, I really could use a connection today. Do you have any time to talk? I know you're busy. That's really important too, because we're built to connect. It's in our biology and our DNA to be connected to each other. So to be able to reach out to somebody in our busy lives and say, hey, I really need to connect today, even just for a couple minutes. Is that possible? Finding ways to do it, even over Zoom. It's not the same as in person, but it's something. Mm-hmm. My family and I, when this started, we decided to play Zoom bingo. So we played bingo once every other week, which was interesting because my parents are the oldest in their mid-70s, and then my nieces are 4 and 2. So to have a wide span of ages on that bingo game was really fun. So that was just one way to connect until things kind of evolved where we could be outside when weather changed. So we took advantage of that. So it's kind of finding the bright spots where you're able to be with someone or to be close to someone. And you can be close to someone without being physically close to someone, I think, for me anyway. So that might mean picking up the phone instead of maybe emailing my friend. That really changed things for me. So it's been, it's an ever evolving learning process. And I think adaptation and learning some stress reduction techniques to be able to manage, because this is a stressful time and it's completely normal to feel that way with everything that we've had to adapt to. So for me, it's been a learning experience, at times exhausting, at times really finding ways to connect differently that I might not have done pre-COVID has been, I think, a blessing in disguise in some ways.
Good. So in other words, when in doubt, reach out, right?
When in doubt, reach out.
Well, thank you very much, Selena. It was good to talk with you, and it's good to know that you're out there helping people. And we will put the information about the website and the fact that the resource guide is available to residents through the website and by contacting your office. So thank you again.
Wonderful. Thank you, Meg.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.